Happy Friday, everybody. Hope you have an amazing weekend. Today, I want to talk to you guys about Palworld. This game has taken the world by storm. I have coworkers who don't even own consoles, who are not playing games in any capacity. I have coworkers asking me about this because this game is making national news attention. It is selling insanely well. It has broken so many records. It's the second most concurrent paid game in the history of Steam, only behind PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds. And it takes a lot of liberty in borrowing elements from other games. I mean, you could argue just straight up plagiarism at this point on a lot of other games and a lot of other systems that kind of raises some question in terms of, can you do that legally? And we're going to find out because that is starting to bubble up. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on in the video, kind of as I talk about the history of this game and kind of where it's going. But needless to say, everybody is talking about this game. It's gained a lot of traction because it's on Game Pass. And obviously because it's got some interesting concepts. So what exactly is this game anyway? Well, it's Pokemon, but it's also Ark Survival Evolved, but it's also got a lot of exploration elements like you would see in Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom / Breath of the Wild. And it's kind of mixing those elements together. You can make food, you can make weapons, you can make player housing, you can make clothing, you can craft things. All of these systems exist in order for you to get farther in the universe. And on top of that, the animals that you capture can be used in combat and in tasking to help you continue to build. And what happens is you get this very interesting loop system of, you leave outside the confines of your safe space, your little base, and you capture a PAL. You bring the PAL back to your base, and they will have a skill set associated to them. A lot of times they're pretty obvious what they're going to be. As an example, if it's a water-based PAL, they're going to have the ability to automatically water crops for you. If they're a little bit beefier, they're going to have the ability to haul things. Like maybe one PAL is mining rocks and the other one is picking the rocks up and walking them across the map and putting them in a box. So you don't have to do that. So you come back and there's 300 rocks in the box because your two pals have been working all day, slaving away, right? There's other Pokemon that do other things like cooking and generating unique resources and things along those lines. But the idea here is that you're putting your pals to work to make things for you. In addition, as I said, you could take those pals out into the field and they fight for you, and they have special unique abilities that make them phenomenal at attacking other pals so you can weaken them, capture them, and bring them back. And you can't take out some of these giant bosses on your own. You're going to need the support of your pal. So you're going to build this relationship with a handful of your pals that are kind of your go-tos that go attack and help not defend your base, at least not yet, but help kind of defend you while you're out in the wild fighting, exploring, looting, scavenging, that sort of thing. So it takes all these elements and mashes them together. Heavy leveraging on what Pokemon is. Obviously, these animals look incredibly similar to Pokemon. The entire ecosystem of how these animals exist with the water-based and the plant-based and the shadow-based, etc., is a blatant ripoff of what Pokemon currently does. In terms of that, I don't even know how many different types of Pokemon there are now, but it's like a 9-point system where, you're strong to one thing and weak to another thing, and you can kind of use that to your advantage when fighting. This game has that as well. There's a heavy reliance on Ark here. As I mentioned, the idea of building up a base, first of all, just a crafting system, building crafting benches and smelters and beds and shelter and fires to cook at, etc., etc., etc. But using your captured pals to help, just like an Ark, when you would go and capture an animal and bring him back and have them go to work and begin to harvest the ground for you or do other tasks, typically defend in Ark. But the fact that you were capturing animals and using them immediately as a tool. And then obviously there's just so much plagiarism here, I think, on Legend of Zelda, down to the little ditty when you find a new area, the font that's used, the way it has this unique look and flair in terms of the art, the little natural like sound effect you get when you're collecting things and looking through things. It sounds almost identical to a Zelda game. So you have a lot of elements that exist that are just complete ripoffs. And that's not to say you can't take data and concepts and expand on them. And trust me, this is a very unique concept, what they've done here. I don't know if it'd be as wildly successful if it wasn't for the Pokemon element to it, but all the systems work. And this all leads into a phenomenal progression system where you make and build and put skill points into things that make genuine gameplay differences in how you play. They're not just quality of life things. They're not just abilities that you get that's like, oh, cool, my Pokemon or / pals, right? I mean, I do even call them Pokemon when we play. We call them Pokeballs when you collect them, even though they're pal spheres. Genuine differences in how you play, not just the fact that they'll automatically feed themselves, but maybe an ability that allows you to capture bigger Pokemon or pals, or abilities that will allow you to glide through the world or to use them as mounts. These are things that definitely make differences. Some of the pal abilities as well, as I said, I just named a few there, but will do extra damage, giving you more traversal options, giving you more combat options. And as you invest and find and take out harder and harder animals, you're going to get the ability to continue down this progression system and build some really, really cool things. So you explore the map, you find dungeons, there are treasure chests laying around, there are rare items to pick up, there are rare pals to collect. There's NPCs that are defending key strongholds. There are world bosses that exist that are out there for you to fight and hunt as well. And then when you do all this, you go home, you eat your food, you craft your new weapons, you get your new abilities, you get your strongest pals, and you go out in the morning again and you do it again and again and again. And this is a very, very, very addicting feedback loop. And I have lost many hours to this with my buddies, like last night, playing through this and just getting kind of spun up and like, oh, that's cool. In another level or two, I'll be able to get this item. Well, we need to go find some more stuff to do. And, as we push farther away and find different biomes to explore, and it releases a whole new set of pals that you want to collect and see what they do and find that they're more useful than the pals you have now at your base. You begin to start managing out pals, assigning certain ones to do certain activities, trying to be as efficient as possible so that you can continue this loop of, progression. And it works. It really does work, and it really is a lot of fun. The graphics are cartoony, but they're definitely serviceable. It does support ultra-wide, as you're seeing here, which is great. I haven't had too many graphical bugs or issues, although I will say the game is still in early access. So I have had my fair share of weird things happen, weird sound effects, weird interactions with the pals on the world. Sometimes they get stuck. Sometimes they're cranky and they won't eat, even though food's in front of them, and the programming gets confused and they're not as effective as they could be. So there is some micromanagement that has to happen here in getting the most out of the pals that you've collected. But I wouldn't necessarily the game is janky, say it's janky. It is supported on Game Pass, but that does present an issue. The developer is actually currently running 2 separate baselines. Now, this is common for Microsoft games. So the Steam version has the latest and greatest updates, a much smoother game experience with the most current patches. Microsoft is lagging considerably. There's a lot of things, as for example, we have a sign in our base that we can't interact with. We can't actually write anything on the sign, so it's just a plank of wood. Simple thing, but just an example. That's not an issue you have on the Steam version. So you read about updates, and if you're playing on Game Pass, which I think a lot of people were probably exposed to this on Game Pass, like me, what happens, unfortunately, is now you have to go back and wait until the new features are updated, and it's more for them to update. So it's this rolling wave of updates. I think if you were really somebody who wanted this to be your kind of forever game, or something that you wanted to invest a significant amount of time, money, or effort into, you most likely would buy it on Steam, because at least you know the Steam support, the back end, the ability to make servers and that sort of thing is a much more reliant way to play a game than the way it's being played on Game Pass. For the future, the roadmap. There's a roadmap that's been released with new updates and features and modes coming. I am concerned with this game in the sense that they have, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, gained national attention at this point on some of the seemingly blatant plagiarization that is occurring in a lot of these game systems. And the studio is very clearly not prepared for this. I think the developers working on this didn't expect this to happen. I don't know what the result of Nintendo's intervention is going to be, but the concern I think here is that it is going to take away some of the focus and some of the drive the studio has as they figure out how to navigate against this. And people much smarter than me will be able to compare Pokemon types and names to PAL names and types. There might be significantly more similarities than I think we're aware of. But the fact that the Pokemon company released a statement yesterday basically saying, hey, we know, we're looking into this, that is very interesting to me. I'm curious to see how that evolves over time. As I close out this video, do I like Palworld? Yeah, actually I do. I didn't think I would like this game. I gotta admit, for the most part, just basic survival crafting games don't necessarily always win me over, and I find myself getting bored quickly and instead focusing on cosmetics and making things look pretty and functional and cool and building bases as opposed to going out and actually exploring new content. Here, because of how the system works, where you have your pals that have special abilities that fight with you, I've actually found that exploring is quite fun, and going out over the next hill and over on the horizon to see what remains and what is out there, what pals exist and what new abilities will I learn and what will I find in the next treasure chest and what kind of rare or unique material will I get next and what will that allow me to craft or build. It is fun. I think there's still a lot of things this game needs to improve on. I mentioned some of the technical limitations of the game and some of the concerns I think that we have in terms of just overall performance and bugs need to be worked out. But I can absolutely see this game investing even more heavily in combat. Definitely not to the level of a game like Monster Hunter or anything, but more unique armor sets and items that do unique things to spice up that combat element, I think would make this game shine in a very, very different way. Yes, there are different weapons now, spears, bows, arrows, bats, etc. However, I think if you could continue to make, I don't want to say legendary items, but more unique items, rare items, better drops, better crafting materials that allow the combat to spice up, I think that would help this game significantly. Additionally, putting the pals to work is somewhat of a chore at times. They get in the way. They get confused. I think that needs to be tightened up, and that system needs to be reliant so that while you're out exploring for the day, the pals back at your base are actually doing what you ask them to do instead of coming home and realizing they're all just kind of standing around doing something stupid or having to constantly micromanage them. These are small nitpicks in a large sea of positives. I do recommend at least you check out this game because it's different. And if you're like me and you played crafting games before and they didn't actually win you over, this one might, because it's simple enough where the systems that are in place make sense and it's bare bones enough but functional enough to have fun. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.